So for those of you that have remembered last year and then the year before that, I reviewed both the Sonic Advance Trilogy and the Sonic Rush games, and now today I'm going to be finally ranking them, much like how I did with the Mega Man X franchise about a few days ago, more or less. Yeah, much like that tier list and ranking video, I figured I would also do a proper conclusion with the Sonic handheld games as well, but a quick disclaimer in this, because as much as the title of the video says every Sonic handheld game ranked, it's almost every Sonic handheld game ranked. For this one, since I didn't really cover them yet, or I did like slight highlights for them in a video called Every Sonic GBA Game, I'm not going to be covering Sonic Battle. I'm not going to be doing that one. I'm not going to be doing Sonic Genesis on GBA. Hell no, we already know how that one is. We all know how we feel about that one. I am not talking about that one at all. And, you know, any other game that was for the GBA and that has Sonic slapped into it, or anything on the DS era like Dark Brotherhood, and also the Game Gear games, as well as Sonic Pocket Adventure, I'm not going to be talking about those. I figured for a future ranking video, they will be part of the spin-off games. And yes, I'm also excluding Sonic Episode 4. Sonic the Hedgehog 4 Episode 1 and 2, because while it was on mobile, I'm not gonna go on that tangent, okay? Let's just strictly talk about handheld consoles, and you know, we'll talk about that some other time. But yeah, without further ado, let's stop the intro here and talk about the tier list itself and which ones are going to be starting us off and which ones are ultimately my favorite, because I think you guys have a solid idea which ones are possibly the S tier already. Unless, you know, you already jumped ahead and through the chapters, which, yeah, there's going to be chapters in this too. Anyways, moving on, let's start the tier list itself. Obviously, going from bottom up, and we're going straight to the C tier, because honestly, there's not really bad games in terms of, you know, handheld Sonic games. I mean, yes, I know there is Sonic Genesis on GBA, but like I said, I'm not gonna talk about it. I've already talked about it any more than it already deserves some recognition. Now leave it the hell alone. But to finally start things off with the C tier of our ranking here, we gotta give it to Sonic Advance on the GBA. Look, I understand, a lot of people probably have a nostalgia bias with this one, but in my opinion, compared to the other games that we have to talk about here and their rankings, Sonic Advance just feels like a modern version of a classic Sonic game, which, don't get me wrong, that's great and all, but that's pretty much it. Like, going back to the footage of this and replaying it, and also the review that I did for it, which, by the way, all the footage you're seeing is from the reviews that I did for it, so if you want to learn more about how I feel about these games, check those out. But Sonic Advance just does things right in the handheld setting, but considering that it was the first one on the GBA, things were just simpler and things were not as ambitious as the other ones like Advance 2 and Advance 3, and of course, you know, the DS games that we're going to talk about somewhere down the line. It's the standard and it's great. You get to play as Tails, Knuckles, and Amy too, especially Amy for the first time. Well, first time in 2D, but I mean, she doesn't control as well as her Advance 2 counterpart, in all honesty. But as a whole, it's rather tame. It's a C tier because it's not as ambitious as it should have been, and it kind of leans a lot of the classic style formula to some capacity, and it just slaps the GBA sprite work with modern aesthetics and modern design. But honestly, there's not really much room that you can appreciate this game aside from all of that. To give some credit where credit is due here, this is the one that gave us that gorgeous sprite work that obviously we're going to see down the line, because Dimps really cooked in terms of that, okay? You know, this isn't a D tier or an F tier because of that alone. And trust me, when we talk about the other games down the line, oh boy, you'll understand what I mean. But anyways, that's pretty much it on C tier. And now moving on to the B tier, we have two games at our disposal here. Two that I kind of wish I spoke a little bit more about, or at the very least with one of them, I wish I didn't speak as harshly as I wanted it to, if that makes any sense. Yeah, so to kind of start with that one, Sonic Advance 3 is on the B tier here, and the reason for it is because it does a good job at blending the mechanics of Sonic Advance 1 and Sonic Advance 2, and I love the team-up mechanic that it had and the amount of combinations you were able to utilize and make for different gameplay styles as you're going through the game. But aside from all of that, there was so many stuff that kind of hindered my overall appreciation for this game because the difficulty curve for this kinda didn't make any sense at all. You see, when it comes to DIMS and them styling the Sonic gameplay, especially on a 2D plane of existence, somehow with Sonic Advance 3, they decided to just throw everything they knew about Sonic Advance 1 and 2 and just decided to say, hey, this is Sonic Advance 3. Like, it has that feel where there's so many ideas that are clashing against each other and somehow they work, but other times they don't work. Like, the later half of this game, all of those other zones from Ocean Base onwards, I just don't remember much of their overall level design because for the most part, I was so aggravated at the very existence of them. I did not like most of the level design of this game, and truth be told, I am also one of those that did not enjoy Chaos Angel's difficulty at all. The bottomless pit scenarios were stupid, the trap gimmicks were annoying, the amount of stop and go in that one was ridiculous, and honestly, for a really cool final zone, I just wish they did a better job at balancing out the difficulty of it, especially after you were doing Cybertrack before it. Like, come on, dude. I was just suffering there and you want me to suffer more even now? But aside from that, it's still solid enough. The other zones are super gorgeous and super fun to go through. My favorites was Route 99 and Sunset Hill Zone, and it's just a fun time regardless of how you feel about it. Like, if you turn your brain off for a few good minutes, it's just as fun as a classic Sonic game. It's just as difficult as any other Sonic game. It's just learning to bear with it and having a high tolerance pain to it that kind of gets it going, and honestly it's good enough for it to be in B tier because of that. But like I said, there's also one more here in the B tier, and that's Sonic Colors DS, the Sonic Rush 3 as I like to call it, because clearly we still don't have a proper Sonic Rush 3 and it's 2024. What the hell, Sonic team? But I kid of course, as Sonic Colors DS does a solid job at maintaining the Rush style of elements to it. You know, the boost mechanic, the level design is truly amazing. I love how it deviates from the console version, and I love how there's a lot of more originality with this one in regards to its presentation, aesthetics, and just overall design as a DS game. You see, comparing this one to the Wii version, I love playing the DS version a lot more, and I think I said that when I was reviewing these as like a big bundle video of all three Rush games, and the reason why is because the originality, like I said, is part of it, but also because it's a Sonic Rush game at the end of the day, and I really enjoyed those, and that made, by default, really made me enjoy this one a lot too. And to go back with the originality stuff, I absolutely love the care to detail they had with the side story content that it has, because as you're getting the Chaos Emeralds for here with the special rings, you also have the ability to interact with Cream and Team Rose, Big the Cat, well, I mean, he's part of Team Rose, Shadow and Team Dark is here, Team Chaotix, Blaze and Silver are here, so that by default makes it Sonic Rush 3. But yeah, you get to meet all the characters that weren't in the console version, and it makes for fun little interactions here and there that for the most part makes this game truly stand out. That and also the boss fights, because as much as you get in the console version the Chaos Emeralds and you get Supersonic, you don't get a Supersonic final boss in that game. Instead, you have the Eggman final boss that's kind of started the trend of Eggman final bosses during the meta era, but that's all you get for the console version. But with the DS version, no, you not only get an Eggman final boss if you don't get all the Chaos Emeralds, but if you do get all the Chaos Emeralds, which should be a breeze, by the way, just saying, you get a very cool final boss where you transform into Supersonic and the mother of all Wisp shows up. Yeah, it's a weird subplot that suddenly appears out of nowhere, but it's a really cool boss fight at the end of the day, especially in terms of the handheld setting. But yeah, Sonic Colors DS is a solid B tier at the end of the day, and in my opinion, I feel like it kind of deserves to just stay here. There's some people that probably would put it as an A tier, others might put it as a C tier, but for me, it's a B tier. That's good enough as it can be, and honestly, like I said, it kind of deserves to be there regardless. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, we're finally here on the A tier territory, and this is where I'm going to be losing a lot of you. As if the entire tier list itself probably wasn't as divisive as it already is, maybe some of you guys consider Sonic Advance 3 as an A tier, this is where I'm gonna be like, oh yeah, you haven't seen the last of it. So A tier here for my case, just to rip off the band-aid, is Sonic Rush Adventure. A lot of people are already gonna be like, oh, okay, you know, that makes a little bit more sense. But there's another game for this one, and that's Sonic Rush also. Yeah, see, I probably already lost a lot of you guys in the comment sections down below. Just to start us off with that one, because look, I love Sonic Rush, okay? I understand why a lot of people would have it as an S tier, but I have to be honest with you, I'm not most people, okay? This is a subjective tier list, and these are my reasons why. While great level design and the progenitor to the boost formula, because yeah, this game released in 2005 and is the reason why there was the boost mechanic moving forward, starting with Sonic Unleashed in 2008. I love level designs. The level designs were fantastic. The 3D sprite work was really cool. Dims did a solid job aside from certain cases with bottomless pit scenarios and the usual stop and go elements, but overall it was a solid experience. And you even get to play as another character here, being Blaze the cat, and this was her first introduction, okay? You know, forget about Sonic 06, forget about that, all right? You know, this was where she shined the most, and I had a solid time with her as well. Like, it was a really good game, okay? Don't get me wrong, that's why it's an A tier. But despite all of that, the only reason, and I get this is probably the most petty reason why it's not an S tier, is because of the music. Listen, I like Hideki Naganuma's tracks, okay? The OST for Sonic Rush is amazing. Groove Rush is a fantastic album in terms of Sonic OSTs. It's just not Sonic for me. When I think of Sonic, especially modern Sonic, I think of rock and roll, I think of the adventure era. And with Sonic Rush, I just don't like the music here, okay? Especially when you're doing the trick system, the music gets drowned out, and honestly, it just feels like these were just unused tracks of Jet Set Radio, and they were like, all right, you know what, let's just throw it on a Sonic game of all things. Like I said, they're not bad, but it's the only reason why I have it as an A tier, because the rest of the game is fantastic. Level designs, again, like I said, were absolutely phenomenal. My favorite ones was Water Palace, the casino place, friggin' when they were at the GON places, post-edit is gonna give you the names, here you go, here are all the lists. But the zones themselves were amazing, and them reusing some of the assets from the Advanced trilogy made it work. Like, this is a very fun game, but I just didn't really like the music for this one. Yeah, anyway, throwing that petty reason aside, I can already see the comment section like I said. Now let's talk about Sonic Rush Adventure, the one game that actually does deserve the spotlight of A tier, and I don't think it can go anywhere below or anywhere above it. Now, I also understand a lot of people would consider Sonic Rush Adventure to be B tier, and the reason why is the amount of backtracking this game has, and there is so much backtracking because they really wanted to hammer home the idea of this being an adventure and you sailing the seas like some One Piece shenanigans and all that kind of stuff. Totally get it, but there could have been a lot more, you know, leeway, a little bit more of, you know, easier groundwork in terms of like backtracking and stuff like that. You know, what's the point of having to chart an entire course every single time just because I want to see something interesting? But aside from that, level design is pretty solid. It's a lot more simplistic than Sonic Rush's in terms of difficulty, which is absolutely great because you have to remind yourselves that these are also handheld games. You don't want to break your DS in the middle of the road for an 8-hour drive to Disney World. Trust me, the Sonic Rush Adventure does a really good job in at least allowing you to have that understanding of, oh yeah, this is a handheld Sonic game, you're gonna have fun, you're gonna have the boost formula, you're gonna have the trick system, we're gonna simplify the level design to make it stand out in the sense of like, oh, you're not gonna cry after an hour or two. And of course, you also get to play as Blaze the cat again, and there's a lot more emphasis to her because we're in her dimension this time around, in some part of her world, and it's just pretty cool to have more of that dynamic between Blaze the cat. Marine the raccoon is also, you know, a new character here introduced. I absolutely loved her. I loved her goofy nature at times. She was pretty annoying, but the story of this game was pretty fun. It was super simplistic. It was very One Piece-esque, because I mean, you're dealing with robot pirates and that's pretty cool. Obviously, Eggman returns with, you know, Eggman of the other world. I'm not gonna fall for that trap, I'm just kidding. But you know, there's obviously that final subplot with both Eggmans at the end, and it's a pretty solid time. The final boss is fantastic, reminded me surprisingly of Sonic Unleashed, but I think that's because of the music, and the music is fantastic. It's Otami's composition, which is great for those who played for those who have played Sonic Unleashed and then Generations and all of the modern Sonic games. You know him to be that guy in terms of composition, and you know, this is where he shined a lot, you know, especially before working on Sonic Unleashed a year later. But yeah, that's basically it. Honestly, like, some of my favorite stages here was like Sky Babylon, I think it was called, Sky Garden, Mechanical Yard was pretty cool with the music, and Coastal Cavern, I think that's what it's called. But there was a lot of more unique level designs and level aesthetics that I really enjoy, and the boss fights were pretty cool. You know, they're way better than Sonic Rushes, which is also another reason why Sonic Rush is an A tier. Like, those boss fights were horrendously annoying because of the pacing of it, and the final boss was just stupid. Like, I don't understand that. But going back to Sonic Rush Adventure, it was a solid time, you know, definitely worth the A tier in my opinion. I can understand it being B tier, but honestly, I don't think it could go any more further than here. But now we're finally at the S tier, and what could possibly be the S tier in my tier list that could, I don't know, dethrone Sonic Rush of all games in the handheld setting? And that one is Sonic Advance 2. Yeah, I'm one of those guys. Deal with it. Yeah, I don't know, like, if you know me well enough in the channel, you know, the channel's history and all that, and even if you look at the title of the Sonic Advance 2 review that I did, you can tell that I have a bias with Sonic Advance 2, and honestly, it's for the better. I get that a lot of people don't like Sonic Advance 2 and would prefer Advance 3 in some cases, which, you know, I can argue that some other time. But Sonic Advance 2 is S tier for me for the sole purpose that it gets the job done in terms of reminding you that this is a handheld Sonic game. It's fast, it gives you the momentum you want, and I know that's a bad word in the Sonic community, but I'm not a part of the Sonic community. I like Sonic, I don't care. The momentum in Sonic Advance 2 makes this easily one of the best Sonic games for the handheld, one of the best Sonic games in my opinion, period, because the fact that you go from point A to point B in the fastest time possible, which is what a Sonic game is supposed to do and should reward you for doing that, I absolutely love it. Yes, the one problem I do have is the special rings and why there's 7 of them. It's super annoying, especially since it requires you to stop for a second from that momentum that you were gaining throughout the course of each act and having to, you know, do a little bit of some treasure hunting. But aside from that, it's an amazing experience. I love playing through all the characters. It was a hassle to get the Chaos Emeralds for everybody, don't get me wrong, but having Amy as an unlockable and seeing her thrive just as much as the other guys you were able to play as, it was truly unique. And you also remind yourselves, Cream and Cheese was introduced in this game too, okay? The iconic duo with, you know, a rabbit that has a JoJo stand of a character. Let's be real here. If you play Sonic Advance 2 and you do a Cream route, that's the only thing you're gonna do. You're gonna muda all the way through in each and every Eggman boss fight. That's the reality here. But this is where we got the most adorable character in all of Sonic history, and we also got Vanilla, which we all know how we feel about her as well. I'm not gonna say that part out loud. But aside from that, look, level design amazing, zones were incredible. It reminded me a lot of the adventure era, truly showcasing everything about what made Sonic Adventure what it was, what made Sonic Adventure 2 what it was, and in some cases Sonic Heroes, despite this releasing a year before that even happening. So Sonic Advance 2 to me solidifies everything about the adventure era, everything that made me want to play a Sonic game in the first place, and just the nostalgia of it. The nostalgia bias is really hard in this case because this was the Sonic I grew up with. This aesthetic of Sonic is truly amazing, and the stages amplify that. The way the stages are laid out is extremely incredible. This is the Sonic 2 of modern Sonic 2D games, and I'm just happy to see that, and I'm just happy to give it an S tier, and I don't care what everybody else thinks about this game, okay? It is truly underrated, and like I said in that review, the perfect 2D Sonic game. But yeah, that's it, ladies and gentlemen. This is how we're concluding the handheld Sonic games. If you really want to see more of my thoughts about these, The reviews are there. The Sonic Advance trilogy is there for you to, you know, to look at how bad the editing was like back in the day. And of course, you also have the Sonic Rush trilogy to look forward to. You have those reviews. And honestly, I'm glad to make this tier list, much like how I did the Mega Man X one, because I kind of like these games at the end of the day. You know, all these games are truly reminiscent of my time as a content creator here, and I'm just happy to do this moving forward with future review marathons that I have covered for you guys, because I ain't done yet, you know? I got plenty more games to cover, plenty more franchises to hopefully do more of these tier lists in the future. But for this one, for Sonic, I'm just happy to close it on this on a high note, in the sense of like, I feasted. And I hope you guys understand that too. But yeah, go throw your comments, you know, down below. Let me know what your ranking would be like. Which ones is your S tiers, your A tiers, your B tiers. Hell, tell me more about the Game Gear games and also Sonic Pocket Adventure if you play that. And if you were to rank them in this, you know, in this tier list, where would you put them? Like, do all that in the comments. I love reading what you have in store for me there. And like I always say, I got a lot of stuff to deal with. I got a lot of projects to take care of. So I'll see you all with that next one. You know, peace out. Roll the outro. You know how it be. So see ya.